Are you happy in your business? Now, I have had my share of emotional ups and downs in my 20 years of being a solo entrepreneur coach. And the patterns I've seen in myself and in my clients is that those downs are usually when I was personally feeling unfulfilled. Sometimes it was because a launch that flopped, and sometimes it was just life and had nothing to do with business. But those ups, oh boy, those are the times when I was feeling my most authentic and completely aligned to my purpose, or when I just felt like I was rocking that work-life balance. I would be thinking I could do this all day long and never feel tired. One of my loves is sharing what works for me and what has been working for my clients to achieve this very feeling, full of passion, happiness, peace, and freedom. So I decided to create a private podcast for coaches. Maybe you just want to develop better communication skills that boosts engagement, leads to better results, and makes you feel like you're actually making a difference in the lives of the people you serve. Then you're invited too. We talk about this and more in the UBU private podcast for coaches. Whether you're a mentor, a parent, or run a client-focused business, coaching skills benefit everyone and anyone who wants to communicate in a way that builds relationships. Fall in love with your life and business again. Click the link in the show notes for your invitation to join us right now. Then come back and enjoy this episode. Today, I'm talking with Dorene Olsen, also known as the Brand Builder. We talked about what branding means for you as a person first, even before you have a business. What do you represent for your character? Now, much of what we chatted about can be explained by the experience gap that you've been hearing me talk about in previous episodes and in my courses. And this is where how others view you and what your intentions are can oftentimes be very different. And that's what leads to mistyping on the Enneagram. And for branding, that's a misrepresentation of yourself. And that will lead to dissatisfaction. Now, Dorene is a Myers-Briggs fan, and her Enneagram tests really felt inauthentic to her, which can be a turnoff, right? So listen into this episode and see if I was able to turn her around on that. It's time to stop comparing yourself to others and plug in to what is uniquely you. Welcome to Unbox Your Personality, the podcast for coaches, parents, and mentors like you who understand that your happiness makes you more effective at what you do, bringing out the best in others. I'm Jen Higgins, personality strategist and Enneagram fluff remover. Get laser focused on who you are and who you aren't, so you're free to make the impact you were born to make. And have fun doing it. Your personality is your business, so let's get down to business. I'm so excited to talk with you today.
I am thrilled to be here. And you and I share a lot of, looking at the inside to figuring out our outside, right? And so I'm really, really excited to dig in today.
I am too. We're going to nerd out on some personality today. I have a feeling.
Yeah.
Okay. So before we get started, just let the listeners know, who is Dorene Olsen?
So I am someone that brings soul and structure to your business so that you can help turn your business into a brand, help it resonate, really develop strong messaging and strong revenue channels. And I could be called a brand strategist. I could be called a brand accelerator. I tend not to like boxes. So I tend to call myself a brand builder.
Well, speaking of boxes, you're in the right place if you don't like boxes.
Yes, I love. And today we're going to unbox my personality, right?
Right. Unbox your Enneagram because you're new to the Enneagram, right? But you've been using personality already in your business, right?
Yes. So the work that I do is all focused on branding. Branding is the message and the image that you leave behind when you leave the room, right? And half of it is you, half of it is the perception of the audience that you're speaking to, the marketplace, the space that you're in. will have a perception of who you are and what you do. And actually, we just saw that on the Super Bowl ads. Each of these businesses have a brand that they will convey that leaves a mark in our mind afterwards as to what they represent.
And I love how you say, if you don't brand yourself,
others will. And
others will.
what I love is that I think there's a lot of intimidation out there, for when you're starting your business, you're hearing that you need to know your audience and speak to your audience and speak their language. But the real secret is, if you speak your language and you know your language and you know your best, and you understand your beliefs, you understand your motivations, which the Enneagram helps you with, right? And
Yes.
These various personality tests help you with. When you understand those, you can project those. So suddenly your audience, your people recognize the best in you because you recognize the best in you. And things get a heck of a lot easier.
And we really are our best client, right? And so when we know ourselves, we attract more of ourselves, which we know how to work with us.
Yeah. And I am somebody that I know I appreciate structure, but I also am a highly creative, momentum filled individual. Like, I'm thinking fast, I'm moving fast. And I've been aware of having a bit of a different personality ever since I was a little kid, and recognized my role in the neighborhood, when I was playing sports, and I wasn't always the last one chosen for a team within the neighborhood, but knowing where I kind of fit in the whole. And Jen, thinking about today, I'm pretty sure I was in my late teens when I first came across one of the earlier personality tests of Myers-Briggs.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so dumbfounded to take a test that says, are you more like this or like that? Do you like this? Do you like that? How do you express yourself? And it validated how important I am. So recognizing some of these traits in our personalities is exactly what helps brands stand out. It fast tracks businesses to become brands, when they know exactly why they're important.
Yeah.
So that's why I love the work that you're doing with the Enneagram and helping people understand more about, like, well, even everybody's different, right? Like that message of everybody's different is like the very thing that helps brands stand out. You've seen that.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that people don't want to be put in boxes, right? But we take these tests because we get validated, because really we're all in a box. We just don't recognize it, but we're not meant to stay in that box. We're meant to rise above it and bring our differences out into the world. And I think that's what you tap into when you're helping your other businesses.
I think you're right. I think these, like any sort of tests, they depend on a lot of aspects, both internally as well as externally, but they provide a great foundation of where you start. Another test that I'm aware of is Gary Chapman's 5 love languages. Mm-hmm. And that gave me very, very clear understanding as to why my sister thinks the way she thinks and why I think the way I might think, mm-hmm. and how to best communicate with her in a way that she knows she's loved and that she's supported. And, finding those languages, finding those beliefs that we can share, and recognizing more of ourselves isn't a selfish act. In fact, it's very service oriented, so from a business point of view, when we know why what we do is so important and how we do it is so important, and we can start to see foundationally why the work that we do is so important to help move the world to a better place, right? Like, that suddenly becomes a service thing that we can talk about, and we can talk about with surety. And when we have surety, then our clients can have surety in us. They can see a little bit of themselves in what we believe and what we care about, right? Mm-hmm. But if we kind of keep that in and keep it in a box, it doesn't work that way. The connection is through that, revealing what's in that box. So from that starting point, I have learned so much. In fact, Jen, it's put me on a decade and decade long path of curiosity. Like once you understand that there are pieces of you in this test that you took, and there's a foundation, you can build on it. The number one question that I'm asked is, so me as an individual or me as a company, how do I get comfortable talking about myself? And when we find these, different aspects through the Enneagram and understanding our strengths, understanding our beliefs and our values, when we can talk about them, suddenly it becomes highly connective.
Yes. Yes. And being able to connect is about being seen and heard. And I loved how you talked about languages. I'm a big love language fan too. I actually made an analogy. So I have a challenge coming up, and I made an analogy that being seen and heard is like a language. And
Yes.
if we know how to speak our own seen and heard language and be
Yes.
able to speak other people's seen and heard language, these connections build faster. We can build relationships faster through these connections. Otherwise, we're just a part of the wallpaper. People don't
Well,
see.
otherwise we risk shooting arrows into the ocean, and we don't know if we're on target or if we're totally missing the connection.
Yeah.
Which provides a lot of frustration, a lot of wasted energy, right? So, I love the work that you do. You're helping people know their inner strengths, and in knowing their inner strengths and helping them find not only their inner strengths, but their confidence, that allows fulfillment, that allows effectiveness, that allows so much. There's such a wonderful ripple effect all around that when we can help each other, know exactly how to stand in our light. I have always been the odd duck within corporations because I was always the idea girl. And sometimes I was moved from department to department because it's like, okay, the next department, which is the next department that needs to grow? Let's put Dorene there. And my titles, often I gave myself my own titles because they couldn't come up with one. There wasn't a box to put me in. And that's okay. That's what made me special. That's what helped me add value and revenue to the companies. I started my business 6 years ago simply because I got antsy. I knew that I could help more companies find their message, more companies and organizations, nonprofits, streamline what they do, less energy, more output, and more clarity around who they are so they can attract the right people.
So I have a question for you, because I have business people who are listening, business owners, coaches, teachers. Some are independent contracting teachers, especially with COVID, right?
Yeah.
And I also have parents. What can you offer, like a message? People who aren't necessarily a corporation, but more of a small business.
I think the easiest way to think about it is when you see your inner self in your outer work, you become unstoppable. You become impactful. You know why you're doing what you're doing. There's such clarity to that. And when you have this alignment and you can see who you are and what you do from the inside out, there's suddenly this alignment that you know exactly what your purpose is, and I know there's a lot of talk around that these days, but if we get to a really simple message of finding your inner self in your outer work, it really becomes unstoppable. I have a short story to share with you. I was working with a client 2 weeks ago that has unbelievable potential in front of him. He is somebody that realized with the paddleboarding world that he felt like, the paddle boards that are on the market today are kind of like paddling a kitchen table across the water. It wasn't overly efficient. He came up with a fantastic design and approach to it. He started making his own paddle boards. They are speed boards. They are built like the hull of a ship. They move through water. They are built for speed. And he had the opportunity to partner with one of the world's largest carbon fiber corporations. And why I'm sharing this with you is that in working together, I always go back to where things start, right? And look for the story that is within the person's soul to find out why are they doing what they're doing. So this particular gentleman, he's in his 60s. He has multiple revenue channels. He is a ship's pilot. He can drive a ship that's 1,000 feet long, 5-foot clearance underneath, and do so into a harbor and not be rattled, right? He's the same man that hops onto a paddleboard and loves to skim across the water. And he shared a story with me of remembering when he was 8 years old and his uncle first put him in a canoe and they went canoeing together. And so here at 8 years old, the effect of being outside with the water and the connection with the water and the momentum and the ability to pilot came to life. And that is what he's still doing 6 decades later, only he's doing it on a massive scale and a smaller scale, like a personal scale and a commercial scale. So I really feel like the work that you do, the messaging here is really like, look at the inside of what you do. Like, look on the inside for the answers, whether you're a teacher, you are a nonprofit executive director, or an organization, your best message comes from inside you. And for him, it is all about the glide. It is all about the speed. It is all about the engineering and the designing that goes into everything he does. His wish is to have that feeling that he had as an 8-year-old in that canoe, being able to be right out front in that canoe and taking people where they haven't been before. There's only opportunity in front of you, right? And he's sharing that now, getting people easily offshore and on board onto the water through paddle boards.
And do you think that he wakes up every morning loving his life and loving his job?
Oh my goodness. He pulls such long hours. And this is a person that doesn't need to. He's reinventing a harbor on the coast here. And he's got all these projects going. And the reason that he can work through all these projects, he makes it look effortless. And it's because he is doing the work from the inside out. Everything he's doing, he is seeing his inner self in his outer work at all levels, his volunteer work, as well as his, the revenue streams that he's bringing in, for both himself and for one city, he's helping to reinvent the harbor, and that brings to life a whole community. Like, that's beyond volunteering and helping on such a level, that reinvents a whole economy in an area, and he's doing that because he's made those discoveries himself of seeing his inner self and his outer work. And that's the work that you and I do.
I love it. Yes. Because I always say that the ultimate goal of the Enneagram is community. Because when we can step out of our box, kind of get out of our ways, get alignment, find out what makes us different, find out what we can bring to the world that keeps us grounded in ourselves.
Yes.
Ultimately, it's in service of the community. It's finding that piece of where we fit. And if we're all the same, we can't all fit in this little
box.
If you think about a puzzle, right? If we're all the same piece trying to fit into this one area, it doesn't work that way. We all have a spot on the puzzle.
And we really do. And when we know that spot, it's so much easier to work. We kind of have guardrails in our life of like, okay, this is the lane I want to swim in, and I love swimming in it because I know I do a really good job, but here's the lane that I'm going to pass the baton to, and so it starts to build that community, build that ecosystem. And I would even say, Jen, connecting with you, knowing that you are a personality strategist, right? That stood out to me, knowing that I'm a brand personality strategist, right? So we do similar but different work. And what happens when we stay curious with that? What happens when we say, am I willing to talk to another strategist about strategy? It's like, if we stay curious with that and we don't judge ourselves, we don't keep ourselves in a small box, we grow, we learn, and we have a positive ripple effect, which I would hope from even our discussion today that whether you're a teacher, a parent, who you volunteer with, follow your beliefs and follow what makes you feel good. And that's exactly what these personality tests are showing us, is like, what are we leaning into? What do we enjoy? What do we not really enjoy? And know that that's okay.
Yeah. Absolutely, that we are okay. Our differences are okay. And the need or the desire to be happy, whatever that looks like for you, because I'm a type 7, so type 7s are known for their core motivation of being happy.
Yep.
Everybody wants to be happy. It just looks different. It looks different for everyone. So whatever that means for you, it's attainable and you deserve it.
Yeah.
And you are meant to have it. I mean, that's why we're structured to move towards that desire, and to move away from that fear, because we were born for something, to make an impact.
Well, and I think that's where our minds come into play. You know, our bodies can kind of show us what that fear is so that we can make decisions, but our minds can keep us curious and we can actually, whenever I get fearful about something and I feel like a tightening in my chest or what have you, I turn about 180 degrees around to say, what is the opposite of this fear, so that I can move into this and see what this is all about. You know, and it leads to such wonderful things. It does lead to kind of an ecosystem and community that we're building here, you know, and I do think where you have such a variety of listeners, whether, you know, as a parent, as a, you know, nonprofit or large organizations, this formula still works. Like, knowing who you are on the inside allows you to command and drive everything around you. You know, if I just had the conversation earlier today with my membership, actually, a private group that I coach, and that is that, you know, looking at I just got distracted on something. I'm so sorry, Jen. Looking at your strengths and who you are, and getting those messages really, really strong, like being able to stand in that light allows such ease to do what you do and do it well. You know, we don't have to be all the things. You know, instead, if we focus on what we enjoy most, what does that bring? Fulfillment, joy, community, curiosity, discovery, you know, so all of those things. So I'm really excited about the work that you do, Jen, and where you're taking people in helping them to unbox their personality. The best part of that word, personality, is that it's person, you know, and the work that I do, I'm bringing humanity back into branding and marketing, you know, rather than just kind of the surface level stuff. Instead, bring such clarity to who we are and what we do, so we can, you know, positively impact those around us.
Are you feeling a bit disappointed that you haven't finished that project yet? Are the kids' schedules impacting your business? Or are the demands of your business affecting your relationships at home? Maybe you need a magic formula for that work-life balance before your fire gets so dim or it completely burns out. I've been there. There was a point in my life where I was juggling 2 businesses and homeschooling and had personal health issues. There was barely time to even connect with myself, much less connect with my husband. When I was finally officially diagnosed with ADHD, I felt like that explained everything. I had a new perspective and started approaching things in a new way. So I created a guide containing 20 tips that I personally use, and they have worked for me for helping me stay on course with my goals. Now, you might not have ADHD, but I bet you can relate to having a million distractions during the day. So if you're ready to stop procrastinating or stop being hard on yourself for missing yet another deadline, self-imposed or not, go ahead and download the guide at powercoachjen.com. If you just find one tip from the list that helps you move forward today, you will be so glad you took the time to read it. Go to powercoachjen.com and download the guide right now. Absolutely. So speaking of curiosity, you are fairly new to the Enneagram. We've had a couple of discussions. Do you have any questions for me? We've kind of, on private messages, we've kind of gone back and forth. What do you know so far?
Well, I'm curious about so we talked about how the Enneagram is a starting point. And I'm curious when you don't align with some of the things, that the numbers say. I'm wondering what you've seen for shifts on that, whether, because I almost feel like I'm mistyped, based on the questions that I answered on that particular day. I feel like, it does not feel authentic to me. I was surprised. And I'm a pretty self-aware person that's been helping others be even more self-aware. So I was surprised with that. And I'm curious what you see.
Yeah, so I was surprised by your results as well. Well, first of all, I'm a firm believer that tests are not because for a lack of trying, not for a lack of trying to be a good test and be set up to be reliable, but because either we're too aware or we're not aware.
Gotcha.
And we don't answer the tests reliably.
Yeah.
We just don't. I've taken one test that has told me the number that I am,
Yeah.
and it was a $200 test.
Hmm.
And so, with that saying, I mean, I'm living proof. Tests aren't really great at it. You really have to understand the structure of the Enneagram. And you have to understand that it's based off of your motivations and not your behaviors. And the problem with tests is that it focuses a lot on behaviors. And if we just answer the questions because, oh, um, we like to research things, or we're artistic, or we really like to help people, or we have a fear of failure, or we want to be happy.
Yeah.
If we really focus too much on those behaviors or those loaded labels and not really dig into the why
Yeah. And,
of
and
our
really look at
behaviors.
the messaging around the motivation,
Yes,
right? So
yes.
as you share this, it makes me think like there is a good chance that I answered some of those questions thinking, well, this is how a creative person would answer, right? Rather than my true motivation. So I'm going to have to take that test. I
And
also,
I do have a questionnaire on my secrets to Enneagram typing. So
yeah,
you went through secrets of Enneagram typing, right?
yes,
So
I did.
just added a questionnaire to the end of that. So if you go back, review the secrets
Yeah.
again of the mistakes that everybody makes, the three mistakes that people make, and then the three fixes. At
Hmm.
the very end, I've added a questionnaire that describes the common behaviors of each of the types in context of their motivations. So sometimes it's a little
Yeah.
bit easier. If you skip straight to the questionnaire, you still might be tempted to look at the motivations, but if you go through, editor's note, I meant to say behaviors there, not motivations. Even just skim through the mistakes and the fixes again,
Hmm.
it makes it a little bit easier to go through the questionnaire and answer the questions in terms of your motivations, because I mean, personality is behavior, it's patterns of behavior. The difference is that understanding that our behaviors are coping strategies to get what we want or to avoid what we don't want.
Yeah. And that is actually something that when I got distracted before, I remembered the point that I wanted to share with you. And that is that when you are looking at whether I am helping a client really get to the heart of who they are and what they do, and finding those words and those phrases, sometimes we'll look at what that attracts. And sometimes that isn't what the client wants to attract, right? So you'll see where I'm going with this in just a second. But I feel like, when we identify who we are and where we're at, right? And then we look at where do we want to be, right? Um, the personality tests that we're talking through are a starting point, right? And it shows us where we're at. And when we look at where we want to be, it starts to shape the direction that we want to go, so it starts to shape our messaging. And, when we're shaping ourselves, that starts to help shape our audience, the people that we're attracting,
Mhm.
so whether we're an organization or we're in a parent group, or we're a teacher, what do we want to attract? And looking at our personality and fitting that piece of the puzzle into the world around us and moving it, a little bit this way or a little bit that way, really gives us a lot more, I want to say control, but I think the word is more, instead of control, it's more input on how we're perceived and where we want to go, what our goals are, right?
Would you use the word strategy?
Yes, I would. So it's a good plan. It's a good plan to work with. Yes.
And what I love about the Enneagram is that it shows our patterns of behavior in stress and in security. So that surety you were talking about, when we have that confidence, when we're sure of ourselves, then we understand based off our personality, are we being our best selves, or are we pulling out the mask that sometimes we pull out when we take this test, that perception that other people have about us, right?
Yeah. And that mask does come out when we start to let the outside in of who we think we should be instead of who we are. And the more we can stand in the place of who we are, the more we stand out, and it gets a heck of a lot easier. There's a lot less effort,
Yes.
So, yeah. And it's fun effort. Like I find, like the example I gave you before of the ship's pilot who, is like doing this amazing work with the paddle boards and such, it's so fulfilling. It is what we are meant to do on this earth. And it helps us feel connected. It helps us with our communication. It helps us do what we're meant to do.
Yes.
Right.
Beautiful, beautiful work. I love it. Thank you so much for spending this afternoon. I'm not sure what time zone you're in. What time zone are you in?
I am in the Eastern time zone.
Okay, so we're in the same time zone.
Yeah.
So it's afternoon for you as well. I hope you have a great rest of the afternoon. Before you go, can you let people know where they can find you online?
Absolutely. If your listeners are interested in turning their business into a brand, they can easily reach me through Facebook at Dorene Olsen, or visit my website, savoryinsights.com. I do plan, at savoryinsights.com, our work can start in as little as like 30 minutes, but I do plan on including a couple of freebies that'll be in the show notes, for business people, as well as people that just want to know more about branding, and how we can stay connected. So I loved seeing you today, Jen, and so appreciate, when I was quiet, my head was nodding a lot. Like everything you're saying is so aligned with helping people find their alignment and who they are, and really showing up to be their best selves and their best brands.
Absolutely. Because when we're ourselves, we light up the world.
We do.
We do. Thank you so much.
Do. Thank you, Jen.
Thanks. This conversation was pretty validating for me, so I thank Dorene for your kind words and your belief in the impact that I'm making. Now, just as Dorene uses personality as that starting point to help her clients shape where they want to go as a business or their brand, I believe that the Enneagram shows us the 9 ways that you can shape your character that is going to feel the most authentic for your type. Now, if you've got questions about this, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Power Coach Jen, and let's chat about it. But it really all starts with that starting point of getting your type right from the beginning. Because first, you unbox yourself, and then you unleash your power. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and reviewing the Unbox Your Personality podcast. To learn more about yourself, go to powercoachjen.com. Find out how you are different so you can make your difference.